Track and field. In many parts of the world, the sport of track and field is very popular. Actually, the sport of track and field includes many different sports. In some of these sports, the athletes run on a track. The athletes race against each other to find out who can run the fastest. Some of these track events require great speed for a short distance. In the 100-meter race, the athletes must sprint as quickly as possible. Some athletes can run 100 meters in only 10 seconds. Other track races are much longer, and these events require great endurance. In the marathon, the athletes must run a distance of 42 kilometers. Because this is such a long distance, the athletes cannot run too quickly at the start. Instead, it is important to run at a steady pace and keep some energy for the end of the race. Some athletes can run the marathon in little more than 2 hours. Some races are called middle distance races because the distance is not very short, yet is also not very long. For example, the 1500 meter requires a mixture of speed and endurance. Some athletes can run the 1500 meters in less than 4 minutes. There are also some track events for people who use a wheelchair. Wheelchair athletes can race even faster than athletes who run. Some of the races on the track are for teams of 4 runners. Each athlete carries a small stick called a baton. After running a certain distance, the runner must hand the baton to a teammate, who then runs with the baton. To win this race, the team's runners must be very fast, but they must also cooperate very well with each other. In the field events, athletes compete by jumping or throwing. In the long jump, the athletes run up to a line and then try to jump as far forward as possible. In the high jump, the athletes must try to jump over a very high bar. Another field event is called the shot put. In this event, the athletes try to throw a heavy metal ball as far as possible. Yet another field event is called the javelin throw. In this event, the athletes try to throw a long spear as far as possible. Athletes who compete in the throwing events must be very strong. Both men and women compete in the sport of track and field. Many boys and girls enjoy track and field as part of their education in school. Those boys and girls who have much talent and who work very hard might someday compete in the Olympics. But for most people, track and field is just a fun and healthy way to get exercise and to make friends.
Sport and television. There is little question that television has radically changed the sporting world. Television has done more than just make existing sports more accessible to a mass audience. It has argued that the very nature of sport and spectators' experiences of sport has been shaped by the medium of television. The first televised sporting event took place on May 17, 1939. A baseball game between 2 American schools, Princeton and Columbia, marked the beginning of a new era in sport. The first broadcast, however, was not of particularly high quality. Viewers could hardly see the players on the television screen, the technology at the time being of very low quality. In addition, very few people owned television sets at the time. Only 400 TV sets were in circulation, and the average cost of $600 made owning a set impossible for most people. This situation would soon change. Television as a popular and affordable medium grew rapidly in the 1940s and 1950s. By the end of the 1950s, American televised sport entered a golden age. It was during this period of time that major sporting organizations, such as professional leagues and major amateur organizations, such as the International Olympic Committee, IOC, realized the benefits of television. Not only could TV make competitions available for a huge number of spectators, it could actually make money for these organizations. Television companies, in turn, could make money by attracting viewers and selling advertising space at increased rates. Television and sport entered what some observers call a symbiotic or mutually beneficial relationship. The business relationship developed between the American TV company ABC and the Olympic Games is a clear example of the TV sport symbiosis. In the 1960s and 1970s, ABC recognized the importance of using international sport to attract viewers. By being recognized as the Olympic network, ABC quickly rose from being the third biggest commercial network in the U.S. to being the leading network. At the same time, ABC paid higher and higher rights fees to the IOC, and the IOC in turn began to take a more commercial and professional approach to the Olympic Games. The ABC role model has paved the way for other television networks around the world. Today, television rights pay for the majority of Olympic Games expenses. The television and sport relationship has come a long way since the first Princeton-Columbia baseball game. Today, more people experience sport as spectators through the medium of television than they do as regular participants in sport. The television and sport relationship, then, presents a bit of a paradox. While on one hand it has made sport more visible for more people, it has perhaps done so at the expense of actual participation in sport.
Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is one of the most recognized sports figures in the world. To understand the breadth of his fame, it's probably best to think of Jordan in two senses, as a person and an athlete with incredible athletic prowess and skill, and as a cultural and media icon. The second way of thinking about Jordan is probably equal to the first. After all, it was his endorsement of dozens of commercial products, spots in movies, and in general, his commercially and market-produced image that made Jordan so famous worldwide. Jordan was born in 1963, one of three sons of a corporate executive. He attended North Carolina University from 1981 to 84 and was then drafted to the National Basketball Association's NBA Chicago Bulls. During the same year, he co-captained the USA basketball team to gold in the 1984 Summer Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Jordan's fame was quickly accelerated with the help of his agent at a marketing firm. After winning the NBA's Rookie of the Year distinction, Jordan quickly began signing a series of marketing contracts that would eventually create the iconic image known throughout the world. The most notable marketing endorsement contract came with Nike Corporation. Nike built much of its marketing and commercial strategy around Jordan in the 1980s and early 1990s. With his own line of Nike-produced basketball shoes and clothing, Jordan established himself as a marketable commodity. The relationship between Nike and Jordan would be a mutually beneficial one. It elevated Jordan to international prominence while helping push Nike to #1 status as world sports merchandisers. Jordan's athletic status was also aided by the fact that his was a career with relatively little controversy. Unlike many other superstar athletes, social and political controversies surrounding Jordan were rare, and when they did occur, these were minor. In 1992, he got himself into a bit of trouble when he did not allow his image to be used by the NBA for the licensing of leisure wear and memorabilia in the run-up to the Summer Olympic Games. In addition, once at the Games, Jordan, being contractually committed to Nike, refused to wear the official sponsor Reebok's warm-up suits. The issue was resolved when Jordan and his teammates wore the U.S. flag and extra-long lapels to cover the Reebok logo. In 1993, Jordan made a surprise announcement of his retirement from the NBA at the age of 30. He signed as a free agent to play Major League Baseball with the Chicago White Sox and played unsuccessfully, as it turned out, with the White Sox minor league affiliate. Jordan then made a brief comeback in the NBA, only to retire soon after. History will recognize Jordan not only for his athletic prowess, arguably the best the sport of basketball has ever seen, and for his iconic status in the later 20th century world of sports marketing and image production.
On television. Nowadays, the issue of violence on television is often debated. Many people are concerned that the images of violent acts might cause the viewers to become more aggressive. Some of these people believe that there should be restrictions on violent television programs. Other people feel that individuals should be able to choose what they want to watch on TV. Many of these people believe that violent television is unlikely to affect people's behavior. One of the concerns that some people have about violent TV is that the viewers might imitate aggressive acts. For example, consider a TV program that shows professional wrestlers. Some people believe that children who watch the program might copy the actions of the wrestlers and that this could lead to serious injuries. As another example, consider a TV program that shows people shooting guns at each other. Some people believe that viewers of such a program might be more likely to use a gun in their disputes with others. Another concern that some people have with violent TV is that it might make people less sensitive to the effects of violence. In other words, People who watch many acts of violence on television might no longer be shocked by violent acts. They might then become quite tolerant of the use of violence. Some people do not believe that violence on television is likely to have harmful effects. They point out that many terrible acts of violence occurred long before television. They also argue that people can tell the difference between television and real life. That is, they say that people are unlikely to imitate violent acts and are unlikely to become less sensitive to violence in real life. Also, they argue that parents are able to prevent their children from watching violent television. Psychologists have conducted some research studies on the effects of violent television. Some studies have shown that children who watch a lot of violent TV do become slightly more aggressive as adults. Other studies have found that people behave somewhat more aggressively after watching a violent program. This is especially true for people who have an aggressive personality. Finally, some other research has found that rates of murder tend to increase slightly in the days following a televised boxing match. Nearly all psychologists now agree that violence on television does contribute to aggressive behavior in everyday life. The issue of violence on television is difficult because it is a conflict between public safety and individual freedom. Some people feel that violent TV should be restricted because it might have harmful effects on society. But other people feel that individuals should be free to watch the programs that they like.
New Zealand. New Zealand is a country that is located in the South Pacific Ocean. The country is made up of two large islands, the North Island and the South Island, which are separated by a narrow channel of water. Although New Zealand has many beautiful mountains and forests, much of the land is used for farming. In fact, New Zealand has almost 70 million sheep, but only 4 million people. New Zealand's farms are also famous for their delicious fruit, especially apples and kiwi fruit. About 10% of the people who live in New Zealand belong to an ethnic group called the Maori. The Maori came to New Zealand by boats from small Polynesian islands. They arrived about 1,000 years ago and lived by farming, hunting, and fishing. About 200 years ago, many more people came to New Zealand. These people were from the British Isles, and they came to New Zealand to begin farms. Today, most of the people of New Zealand are descended from people who came from Britain. During the 19th century, some wars started between the Maori and the British settlers. After years of fighting, the two sides signed a treaty to end the wars. Today, the Maori have achieved equal rights, but there are still some disagreements about land ownership. In recent years, many more people have come to New Zealand, mostly from Asian countries and from other Pacific islands. There are 3 large cities in New Zealand. Auckland is the largest city, with more than 1 million people. It is located in the northern part of North Island. The capital city of New Zealand is Wellington. It is located in the southern part of the North Island. The largest city of the South Island is Christchurch. The cities of New Zealand are very modern and clean. Many tourists enjoy visiting the cities of New Zealand, but they also enjoy the beautiful countryside. New Zealand is an excellent place for outdoor recreation, such as climbing or walking. Most of New Zealand has a mild or temperate climate. The summer is not very hot, and the winter is not very cold. Because New Zealand is in the southern part of the world, summer begins in December, and winter begins in June. The South Island is cooler than the North Island, but both islands have similar amounts of rain. This rain gives the fields and forests of New Zealand a beautiful green color. Each year, many tourists visit New Zealand to experience the beautiful countryside and the interesting cultures of its people.
Nike. Nike and its swoosh corporate symbol are among the most recognized brand names in the world, alongside McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Disney. Starting in 1964 as a sports shoe outlet, the company grew to become the market leader in footwear and apparel. Nike has since diversified into a range of activities, including sports event promotion. Owned by Phil Knight, Nike has become synonymous with world-class sport, especially through its sponsorship of events and elite athletes such as Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods. Nike is so ever-present in the sports consumers' minds that a survey conducted during the Atlanta Summer Olympic Games in 1996 revealed an extremely high awareness of Nike, despite the fact that Nike was not an official sponsor of the Games. Nike's success has, to a great extent, been due to the fact that the company and its swoosh symbol have become ubiquitous in consumers' minds. Nike has even run television commercials without even mentioning its own name, being confident enough that the checkmark swoosh is more than enough to make the company known. Phil Knight has been the main inspiration behind Nike and its corporate direction. A competent, although not elite, middle-distance runner at the University of Oregon, Knight went on to Harvard Business School, where the Nike idea emerged out of a paper he developed for a class on entrepreneurship. Knight's former coach, Bill Bowerman, developed lightweight running shoes that became the new company's trademark in the early days. From these modest beginnings, Nike eventually grew to become the sports giant it is today. Ironically, part of Nike's status in the world of competitive sports merchandising has come from the attention it's received by critics. A short article published in the early 1990s in Harper's Magazine quickly mushroomed into an international outcry against Nike's practice of placing their factories in underdeveloped countries and paying workers below subsistence wages. Nike quickly responded to the criticisms with a number of tactics to either divert attention away from the criticisms, ones that Knight, interestingly, at first denied, or by acknowledging the practices but claiming Nike was cleaning up its act. In many cases, Nike has made an effort to create better working conditions for those in underdeveloped countries making shoes and other merchandise. However, the overall effect of Nike's changes is not known, and several groups around the world regularly check and often criticize Nike's labor practices. Nike's recent marketing extravaganzas include a $200 million U.S. deal with the Brazilian National Soccer Federation. It has been rumored that Knight's ego has much to do with Nike's marketing strategies. Some critics have suggested that Knight's hidden agenda is no less than controlling sports marketing and merchandising throughout the world. Nike's corporate headquarters in Oregon reflect these aspirations. Nike's buildings and surrounding grounds are constructed very much like a religious cathedral, only with elite athletes and Knight himself as the gods.
Earvin Magic Johnson. Earvin Magic Johnson is recognized as one of the best basketball players in the history of the sport. He will also be remembered as the first sports performer of international stature to declare openly that he had contracted the HIV virus. Magic Johnson was born in the state of Michigan and quickly rose to fame in the state by becoming an outstanding player for Michigan State. At 6'9", Magic was a formidable player. An enthusiastic sports reporter gave Magic the nickname to him during his high school years. During his college years, he developed a rivalry with another future National Basketball Association NBA superstar Larry Bird, then playing for the Indiana State basketball team. Their rivalry will become one of the main forces to generate interest in the NBA in the early 1980s. During his playing days in the NBA from 1979 to 1991, Johnson was named the league's most valuable player 3 times. He also became attractive to commercial advertisers during a period when it had become less taboo to use African-American athletes to endorse products. Johnson, however, was always guarded about his comments regarding racial issues. However, he was active in charity work and in general maintained a very positive light in the public's eye throughout his career. On announcing his retirement, Johnson stated that he had contracted the HIV virus from unprotected heterosexual sex. However, tales and rumors circulated in the press and in popular discourse about Johnson's sexual exploits during his days as an NBA superstar. Ironically, Johnson, upon retirement, became a spokesperson for safe sex. Another famous sports star, tennis player Martina Navratilova, criticized Johnson and pointed out that if the same comments had been made publicly by a female, she would have been labeled a slut. Navratilova probably made a good point. Not only was Johnson's public image a positive one, but also he was actively seen as a role model for heterosexual family life. The events and controversies surrounding Johnson's retirement probably raised his status as an athlete in the public eye, making his career that much more notable. There is little question, then, that the combination of incredible athletic prowess and the events surrounding his retirement will bestow among Magic Johnson a prestigious position in sports history.
Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison was one of the most famous inventors of all time. He was born in a small town in the United States during the year 1847. When he was a young boy, Thomas found school to be very boring. A teacher once told Thomas's mother that he believed the young boy was rather stupid. However, Edison's mother knew better. She understood that her son was very intelligent. She then took him away from school and began to teach him herself. As a young man, Thomas Edison became very interested in inventing new machines. One of his first inventions was a small electrical machine that could be used for counting votes. However, the government was not interested in his invention. But Edison was not discouraged. He continued inventing, and his next invention was an electrical machine that could be used for recording the prices of stock. This invention was very popular and successful.